Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Thanks for joining today. Today we are back on the Coxton Sub, but we're somewhere different today. We're on the north end of the route in the town of Johnsville. And today we are working on this massive hump yard. So this is going to be a project that we start today. And we're going to have several videos on this as we get through the different things that need to be worked on. But first and foremost is all the track. All right, so one of the first things that needed to be done here in Johnsville was we needed to rework this arrival and departure yard. So we have 3 tracks for arriving trains, and 3 tracks for departing trains. And as was the case with Coxton as well, they just were not long enough. They were about 2,000 feet each, which, was better than Coxton. At least it allowed me to have 6,000 feet of arriving and 6,000 feet of departing. But of course, naturally, the problem was I would have a train that would just have part of its train sticking out on the main, and I just didn't like that. So I figured it would only make sense, which I know definitely the prototype thought the same way. It would only make sense to have arrival and departure tracks that are long enough to accommodate the entire train. That way we get the whole train off the main and into the yard itself. So right now we are mostly on the north end of the yard here, and basically I'm going to extend these 6 tracks out this way, adding just a little over another 1,000 feet to them. Going to put them right at probably around, I think it was 3,200 feet or so of actual space. So not too bad. And once we're done adding in these 6 tracks, we're also going to make sure that we get them all back connected to the hump and everything. As you can see from earlier, we did disconnect a lot of the tracks that were over here. And I'm sure you also had a hard time focusing and figuring out what the heck is going on, because yeah, that was a massive mess. And so we're mostly going to be fixing these 6 tracks and then just kind of cleaning up the whole process of getting in and out of the yard. So I realized, obviously, after I had spent some time thinking about it, that not only did I want to spend some time kind of reworking the area, but it really seriously needed some operational improvement. And a lot of this just kind of comes back to the idea of being as efficient as possible with as few resources as possible, but not to the point that things get so ridiculously inefficient because there just isn't enough stuff, or also not that to keep it from getting too complex so that, we have, or staying away from situations where we have too many things, which is kind of what it was. It was in a situation where it was too many things. It was way too much to focus on and pay attention to, and there was a lot of redundancy, which was just not necessary. And so in the desire to be lean in the way I designed this whole operation, not debilitating, but lean, be able to get the most benefit out of the least amount of resources, I did decide to make some cuts. So here I'm going to go ahead and start working on some of the signals. I did realize I needed to have a crossover here. And later on, I'm actually going to come in and remove the left side main right there where I just placed that sign. That whole main's going to disappear moving to the north. I realize I don't need it. And I'm going to move this whole control point that we have right here about 2 miles to the north on the other side of the yard and kind of out of the way, which does make also a lot of sense. I don't really want to have 2 control points right back to back, but the biggest reason for that, it kind of goes back to efficiency. I'm just not going to have more than 1 train sitting on the main right there. So the way this divisional yard works is trains that come from the north, they all terminate here in Johnsville Yard. There's very few trains that are going to come from the north and go south without touching the yard unless they're a unit train. And so it just makes sense that we would end up deleting that switch up ahead. So quick break though from the 4 times speed. We're back to normal speed now. Actually, I think it's just like 1.5 speed, a little bit faster than normal. But I needed to do a signal test to make sure that these signals are working. So if you're a BNSF fan, this is for you. I've got the -9 out there. This is definitely out of era for this layout, so on the actual route release, it won't be modern enough for -9s, but -9 is my favorite of the modern locomotives, so I definitely have quite a few of them, mostly from JR. Maybe when the budget picks up a bit, I'll get some from RR Mards as well, so I know that they have some good ones, but I needed this signal here going into the yard to be unbonded, meaning that it would show restricting as a train comes in. This makes it where I don't have to have 500,000 signals inside the yard. I can just have 1 signal, and it's going to show restricting no matter what. And so once the train gets past that signal, it's kind of on its own. It's going to drive at restricted speed until it realizes that it needs to stop. and then if it has to, it'll stop short of, whatever's in front of it. So recommended speed, depending on the railroad and the location, is usually a maximum of 15, but sometimes can be as low as 5 or 10, just kind of depends. But I do want, on the right side here, if I'm clear to the right, I do want to have a clear signal. I realized that I needed to add another junction into that signal, because as I throw it to the left here in just a second, if I remember correctly, I think that was the order it played out in. What happened was it was trying to show me a green on the bottom. So you don't want to have a green on the bottom if you're talking about the straight path. You want the straight path to have a green on top. And I did realize also that I needed to add a couple signals down there in order to actually create a situation so I could test these. So far, so good on that side. Everything looked fine. So now we're going to move to this side here, and we're going to get these replaced. So you saw me remove those 2 absolute signals because we don't need them anymore. They were just placeholders for a minute. And now it is time to program these as well. So this one does not need to be unbonded. Neither of these do, because we're not entering into the yard over there. The only purpose that these signals serve here is to let us know if we're going to be taking the diverge ahead or not. And that diverge is what puts us onto the siding or onto the main. As it turns out, though, since I'm going to be removing one of those tracks, I'm going to have to come back later, and I did actually go back later off camera and remove the signal on the right there because the track on the right got removed. But where this Dash 9 is sitting right now is the track that stays. That's the main line heading north. Behind us is north, and I just work on getting everything programmed up here. So that's the end of CP Moscow. It's about 3,500 feet. And the reason I keep jumping back over is just to make sure that the signal indication is matching up so that my test is good. Having operating signaling is an absolute must for me personally. I like to run AI trains between different locations so that I can mostly focus on just doing the different switching operations and things. So because of that, I need a good functioning signal system that will allow the AI trains to get past each other. Plus, I just like having a good-looking signal system even when I'm driving, which I do occasionally drive a train from time to time. I don't usually get time to kill, but if I ever do get some time to kill, I definitely enjoy running trains north, because north is a little more challenging than running south. Running south is mostly downhill, so it's pretty smooth. But running north, you definitely get quite a few challenges with the terrain and stuff. Not that it's that steep. It's not like Mojave. But it's got some moments where it's challenging and it's fun, and when you have a really heavy train, you do feel it when you're running in realistic mode, which is about the only way I drive. So wasn't always the case, but it is the case now. So we are almost done getting everything situated with the signal. I did have to do a replacement there because the junctions weren't lining up correctly. It was still showing me the green and yellow on the bottom when it was supposed to be on top, and so I just had to swap it out and make sure that I had the right one, because sometimes the way that they're programmed by default, they don't necessarily, or they're not necessarily able to replace that first junction. You can specify that it needs to be switched when you're on the configuration menu there, but it doesn't actually always reconfigure the signal. So I've never looked into their script. That's not my thing. I just know from trial and error that that's kind of what plays out. So all right, we are now done with the signal test. So we are back over on the north end of the arrival departure yard, and we're getting these tracks cut in here. So we're doing a left and a right hand ladder. It's not just one ladder. That is mostly to save track space. I don't necessarily need one track to be way longer than another, so there's no point in only having just one ladder. Instead, we're going to have it split, and the quote-unquote main, or rather central line, is the one that's more or less kind of in the middle. There's no perfect middle because it's 6 tracks, but you get the point. Sadly, the switches on the right there are far more broad than the ones on the left, but it's all good. It's not really a big deal. I got super frustrated by this switch right here. This is the only disadvantage of procedural track, is sometimes it just glitches the ties out at the switch. I've had this happen enough that I've tried all kinds of things, and I just can't find a consistent fix. It's usually something a little bit different each time. It gets really annoying, and so I mess around with it for a while before I kind of accept a mediocre result and then just move on from it. Especially since I was video recording, there was really no point in messing with that anymore. All right, so this is part of the lead here for the arrival departure yard. So this is where the yard crew will come in from the hump. They'll bring cuts of cars along the track I'm laying right now, and then they'll shove them into the yard for trains that are departing. For trains that have just arrived, they actually get their cars picked out from the other side, and the lead up to the hump is over on the south side there. So the hump yard, though, I've got a little time. Let's talk about the hump yard. The hump yard has 27 tracks, and the way I've planned it right now, it has 15 tracks exclusively for receiving cars that are going to industries in Johnsville or via, actually, no, yeah, just in Johnsville. Actually, yeah, that's it. So we have 15 tracks that are 1,000 feet each that will receive cars for industries in Johnsville. So the Johnsville industries can receive at any one point in time and hold 15,000 feet of incoming cars. And then there are 12 cars, or sorry, not 12 cars. There's 12 tracks in the second bowl, and those are 1,500-foot tracks for a total of 18,000 feet. And that is where we sort any cars that are working here in the yard but are getting shipped out to other locations. So, for example, we have some locals that run out of town. We've got the Brockwell local that runs out of here. And we've got like a southbound Manifest and a southbound Wayfreight and things like that. Those are classified and stuff here in the hump yard, and then their cars are stored on those 12 tracks. So all in all, 27 tracks, lots of action. I did finally start testing the hump today, and it did look nice. I will say that when you're operating the hump, you definitely want to keep it down to about 2 to 3 miles an hour. Definitely don't go over that. I do have some retarders built in and things. I'm going to replace them, though, with a different asset that actually has a physical-looking retarder, which is great. And then here, kind of get back to what we're doing, actually, I need a 9,000-foot siding here, and I know that seems a bit ridiculous. So on the subdivision itself, we only run trains that are about 3,000 feet. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to run from here north. North of here is technically Little Rock. From here north, I wanted to run a 9,000-foot train with a mid-train DPU at about 6,000 feet. And basically wanted to have it where it's more or less one massive train that kind of comes in, to Johnsville, drops off 9,000 feet of cars to be classified, and then those cars all go to locations on the subdivision, and then the subdivision, brings cars back to the hump here, and then they get sorted out, and about 9,000 feet of them get put back on that same train, and they head north. And that's one big way I wanted to recycle cars here in and out on the north end of the route. Now, keep in mind, looking at capacities, I do have an equal number of inbounds and outbounds as far as capacity goes, so we're not going to get any bottlenecks here in the yard, and we're not going to run into an empty yard over time. So everything is balanced. But yeah, having a 9,000-foot train come in, I don't have 9,000 feet of yard space at once, so I decided I needed a siding here to be able to hold it in case we had some other trains come in. But that's it for today. Thank you guys for joining, and I will catch you guys next time.